One of the things that I would want and to encourage parents to do is not to ask that question, did you have fun at church today? Because I think that sets up the expectation that church is primarily about fun. So much of it now is about who you are online. And the way that you appear online. That has to do with the fact that so much of their lives are lived online in a place where oftentimes our parents don't have access to. Without those conversations, our students can get lost in another personality, in another world, online again, in a place where parents don't have access to. I grew up in a youth ministry environment where basically every single year from 6th grade all the way until I was a senior in high school, so for 6 years straight, we had a new youth pastor every single year. That kind of turnover is devastating on a child's spiritual development. This is why so many times in Korean churches you have youth pastors that leave after 2-3 years. The pressures to do everything for the youth student is just too much for one person to handle. And so I think it's really, really important that church leaders Hi, my name is Kevin Yee, and I'm the video producer at Rooted Ministries, part of the editorial board with Sola Network. And I have been a youth pastor for over 20 years of experience in the Korean immigrant church.
What is one thing you wish parents understood about teenagers today?
One of the things that I wish parents understood about youth students and their children, specifically when it comes to church attendance, is that Sunday is not enough. So much of youth ministry is relational, and it's about building relationships. And especially if you're a part of an Asian immigrant church, specifically the Korean immigrant church, oftentimes youth ministries have their own Sunday services, like a full-on Sunday service. And so time for students to get to know one another, students to develop relationships, that's very, very difficult on a Sunday morning. I can't tell you how important it is for parents to make the conscious decision to send their students and their children to the Wednesday nights and the Friday nights so that they can build relationships. Those relationships and those friendships can really help solidify the faith of a child during the time that they're in youth ministry. The second thing that I'd like to say is that it's important for parents to understand that the questions that you ask to your kids after church really shapes the expectations for the kids. So oftentimes, one of the things that I dealt with as a youth pastor was, sometimes youth group is boring. It's boring because not everything that we do is fun and games. Sometimes the things that we do involve deep Bible study. We do book studies together. And so sometimes parents will hear from their children that church is boring. And I think that's okay. So when I say that parents need to ask and discuss things with their children after church, one of the things that I would want and to encourage parents to do is not to ask that question, did you have fun at church today? Because I think that sets up the expectation that church is primarily about fun, and church has to be more than that. Church is where we have and create lifelong friendships. Church should be a place where people are worshiping the Lord. Church needs to be a place where our students are being discipled into the faith. And if they understand that, then I think it'll help make those moments when church is a little bit boring or church isn't as fun, it'll help them understand that that's okay, I can get through this, and there will be another activity or there will be another event that is fun, and so parents can work with their children to help make that experience a lot smoother. And so asking questions that are more in line with what did you learn about God, or how was worship today, which of your friends came to church today, what did you talk to your small groups, what did you talk to your small group teachers about, what did you learn in your small groups, those kinds of questions I think will also, number one, help foster more discussion. I know oftentimes parents complain that their kids don't talk enough to them, and so if you just ask, was church fun today, that gives them the opportunity to say yes or no. And so when you ask them a question that's more about what they learned, they'll give you a longer answer, and there's far more to be able to talk about.
What do you wish immigrant parents understood about how growing up as a teenager in the US is different from growing up in Korea or in China?
One of the things that I wished that immigrant parents understood about the way that kids are growing up now, I think it's about the difference between the ways that students are growing up online versus the way that they're growing up in person, or their sort of physical presence with you. I think when it comes to the immigrant story, the way that I grew up, for example, I was made fun of for being Asian. I was made fun of for being Korean. But I think the way that a lot of our students are growing up now, there's less of that. Part of that has to do with the worldwide global success of things like K-pop, K-drama, and things like that. And so it's far more accepted. And so I think that the ways in which our students think about their identity, so much of it now is about who you are online, and the way that you appear online, the pressures that you have online. And I think so much of that stuff is hidden from our parents that a lot of times when our kids have really, really bad mental health struggles, when they fall into severe depression, a lot of times I've heard our parents say, I didn't know, I had no idea that this was coming. And a part of that has to do with the fact that so much of their lives are lived online in a place where oftentimes our parents don't have access to. And so this is why I think it's important that parents take time to physically be with their children in spaces where they can have conversation together. I know for immigrant parents, that's very difficult. Part of the problem is, most of us did not grow up having those kinds of conversations with our own parents. And so we feel that this is a struggle and it's really difficult and it's hard. But I must emphasize that without those conversations, our students can get lost in another personality, in another world, online again, in a place where parents don't have access to. And so parents need to sit down and have discussions about important things with their kids. And I think also understanding that getting to know your children means being interested in the things that they're interested in. So much of the reason why our kids withdraw from our parents is because they find things that they're interested in that our parents are not interested in. So I think it's really, really critical that parents try to find an interest in whatever it is that their kids have interest in. One example would be, my younger children, I have 3 kids of my own, they're really into Pokemon. And so learning about the Pokemon world, finding out the things and what they're all called, and understanding the cards, and when they show me and saying, oh, that's cool. Even if I am so stressed out with all the other things in my life, I don't have time to learn all 150 Pokemon. But there's moments where when they know that I'm interested in the things that they're interested in, it helps me understand when they start to get involved in things that I don't necessarily want them to get involved with. I can have conversations with them about it because they're used to talking to me about stuff. And so I think it's important that parents understand how important it is to be able to have in-person conversations as much as possible.
What is one thing you wish church leaders knew about the challenges youth pastors face?
One of the things that I wish church leaders knew about the challenges that youth pastors face is that youth pastors really need support when it comes to dealing with parents. Youth pastors cannot be the primary disciplers of the youth in the church. Biblically speaking, that is not their primary role. Biblically speaking, it is the parent. The parent is supposed to be the primary discipler. Now, I know, especially in the Korean church, because Korean culture is that we give our kids over to the experts, right? So when it comes to school, we give our kids over to the hagwon teachers and the tutors, and they're the ones that are supposed to educate our kids. But when it comes to faith, parents must realize that you are the primary discipler for your kids. You are the primary example that our children have, that our students have, to know what it means to be a Christian. They see you living that out 24/7. Oftentimes they only see their youth pastor for a couple hours a week. And so without the church's support in really solidifying that role, it's going to be really, really tough. This is why so many times in Korean churches you have youth pastors that leave after 2-3 years. The pressures to do everything for the youth student is just too much for one person to handle. And so I think it's really, really important that church leaders support their youth pastors by helping their parents to understand theologically that parents are supposed to be the primary disciplers. Without that, we will have and continue to have youth pastors that burn out, youth workers that burn out, and they won't be able to last long in the positions that they're in. And I will say, I grew up in a youth ministry environment where basically every single year from 6th grade all the way until I was a senior in high school, so for 6 years straight, we had a new youth pastor every single year. That kind of turnover is devastating on a child's spiritual development. And I think it's important that church leaders need to recognize the longer a youth pastor is able to stay, the longer that person has trust, and the longer that person is able to work with parents as they grow into that role inside of the church. And so I think it's critical that church leaders understand that.
Sola Network exists to influence the emerging generation of Asian Americans and those who lead them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Find our articles, book reviews, podcasts, and more at sola.network. If you would like to partner with Sola Network through collaboration, networking, volunteering, or giving, please contact us through the website.